are both very active in the LDS faith. Both come from 6 generations LDS. My father was especially, church was his hobby. He loved church. He was in stake presidency, high council, bishoprics his whole life. Always going to meetings, I was raised very traditional LDS with family home evenings every Monday night and scripture study every day, and church was our whole life. And basically that's the way Margaret and I have raised our families. Same way. Tried to hold family home evenings and have scripture studies, and we both always had callings that kept us active in the church. We still have callings that keep us very busy all the time. It's very much part of our life.
I'm not 6th generation on both sides. On my mother's side, my grandfather joined the church, the missionaries in South Carolina. But my father's side goes way back.
On my mother's side, they came across the plains from Denmark with the Martin and Handcart companies. The church is very much a part of our life. It has blessed our life greatly. It has given us a lot of happiness, a lot of stability, a lot of purpose and meaning, and we're very grateful for it, thankful for the church. And we both have strong testimonies and strive every day to have our daily devotional and spiritual time. We have gospel discussions constantly. Margaret and I are constantly talking about God, about the purpose of life, and those type of things. It's our favorite thing to talk about. I'd say we must discuss at least an hour a day, don't you think? But we just love it. We always share our insights that we have had that day. Margaret and I met at BIU. We were engaged with 3 months and married within 6 months. Margaret taught school for a year while I finished up my pre-dental. Then I got accepted to school at the University of Washington in Seattle, and we moved there and started dental school. We had 1 child, Nicole, graduated from dental school in 1985, moved back and set up a practice. And we have 5 children. And we have our second child, Clint, is handicapped.
My older brother is extremely autistic to the point of not being able to talk or do almost anything by himself. And my mom stays home as a full-time mother taking care of him.
But Clint has taught us a lot. He's this very special spirit. He requires total care. And Margaret has been a devoted mother to him. Takes care of him every day.
I babysat him all the time as a teenager, and I peer tutored him in high school, and I've always volunteered to take care of him whenever my mom needed somebody to watch him.
Just had our youngest son, Tyler, return from his mission to Oregon. Had a wonderful mission. In fact, I went back with Tyler last summer and visited his mission with him and his mission president, and went back with Kyle and Ryan also. We had Kyle in 1986, 4 years old. We could teach him to play the piano. I thought that was pretty cool. We even found out how cool it was when the other kids, when we tried to teach them when they came along to play, and they couldn't pick it up for a couple of years after that. I remember when Kyle was a teenager, while other kids were out doing whatever, he was planting a garden, listening to classical music. Very artistic. He could play pieces on the piano that I could never master at a very young age. He was a straight A student at school. Went on a mission to Russia, and in fact, after his mission, I went back to Russia with him. He showed me Russia, and I got my wallet stolen in the metro.
That's another story.
Yeah.
The rest of my brothers and I are all Eagle Scouts, and we all served on missions. My youngest brother just got back from his mission, and everyone who's married was married in the temple. As a teenager, I served as a deacon's quorum president and a teacher's quorum president, and I absolutely loved seminary. I met my high school friends in honors English class. And we were all the kind of kids who were like stalwart members of the church. In school, we took AP classes. We competed for valedictorian. We were always on time for our curfews. It got to the point where my mom stopped waiting up for me at night because she knew I'd be home on time. As wonderful as my life has been, there was one big wrench that was kind of thrown into my life's machinery. I didn't figure it out until I was about 12 years old. I always knew that I was different from other boys, but I wasn't able to pinpoint exactly what it was. But then when I was about 12, my body started developing an attraction to guys and not one at all to girls. That's when I realized that there was a good chance that I was gay, and that terrified me. That was the last thing in the world I wanted. I didn't dare tell anybody because I thought that if I were to tell someone, it would somehow make it true, and I didn't want it to be true. So I thought that if I just pretended like it wasn't there, that it would just go away once I grew up. I thought that I could just not have to worry about it, and I could just get married and it would just fix itself. I was never abused. I was never taught how to be gay. It just happened as naturally as attractions happen to anybody. I luckily was never bullied in school. I did a good job closing myself off from other people so that they would never find out. In fact, a lot of people in school thought that I was stuck up because I was so quiet and shy and had a really difficult time making many friends. I kept it a total secret, even from my bishop, especially from my bishop, because at the time my dad was my bishop and I wasn't about to tell him or my mom. My mom was extremely conservative. Both my parents were that way.
I was watching TV one evening. This was before, and they were showing a gay couple getting married on TV. And I was so upset about that I called the TV station and told them how I felt. And the woman I talked to, she said something to me. I can't remember what she said, but it made me think, whoa, I'm being quite judgmental, but still. Still, I wanted to stand up for traditional marriage and all that, and I hated seeing that on TV.
I thought my parents would freak out if I ever told them about me. So I felt like there was no one I could turn to at all. It was something that stressed me almost every day. It was slowly eating at me and making me so anxious that I learned to just shut off my emotions to keep myself numb to it all. In order to cope with the intense guilt and the shame that I felt all the time, I would overcompensate with my loyalty to the gospel and to church teachings. I always went to church. I'd perform all my callings the best that I could. I would always attend seminary and study my scriptures. I prayed so many times that my attraction to men would be taken away. But that never worked. I didn't want to be seen as a terrible person. I always felt like I wouldn't go to the celestial kingdom if I died. I thankfully was never suicidal, which is actually pretty rare, but I made a rule for myself to never even let myself think of such an option, so I never did. But that doesn't mean that life wasn't hard. It was so hard. I kept it a secret clear into my mission. I was called to the Russia-Moscow South mission. Russia was the one place that I secretly did not want to go. I still remember the look on my mom's face when I read my mission call. It was like I had just read my death sentence. She was terrified to send her first missionary to Russia. I was pretty terrified myself. I entered the MTC in December of 2005. I loved the MTC. I felt the Spirit so strongly there. I wanted so badly to serve an honorable mission, but I had this deep, dark secret. I didn't feel like I was worthy to go on a mission. I went because it was expected of me, and I couldn't let my family know why I didn't feel worthy to go. At the same time, I felt like it would be impossible for me to have this spirit and to be a good missionary unless I got it taken care of. As difficult as it was to struggle with that, I'm so glad I decided to go, because literally the MTC changed my life. I started to read the Book of Mormon from cover to cover by myself for the first time in my life, and I prayed every night. I would have nights when I would wait till my roommates were asleep and then just collapse on my bed and bawl my eyes out, saying the most sincere prayers in my life, begging God to forgive me for my mistakes. I'd pour my whole soul out to him, and when I'd finish, I would feel this powerful feeling of total peace, like a vibrating energy flowing through my whole body. And I knew that it was the Holy Ghost dwelling in me. It was the most peaceful feeling I'd ever felt before, and it would soothe me to sleep. When I finished the Book of Mormon, I prayed to know if it was true. In the same prayer, I told God that I had decided to dedicate my life to him and to put everything in his hands. I didn't care what that meant. I handed my whole life over to God and asked him to guide it. That was the biggest turning point in my life. I thought for sure I was going to be sent home. I was finally okay with that. If it meant I was following God, then I wanted to do it no matter what. I confessed to my MTC priesthood leaders, and they told me that the Lord still wanted me to serve a mission. I was completely surprised. I could hardly believe it. I was so overwhelmed at the thought that I was being forgiven and that God still wanted me to serve him as a missionary. After that interview, I felt so much love from God. And I felt like this huge burden that I'd been carrying around for most of my life was finally gone. I remember being on the plane to Moscow, looking out the window, down at the ground. And for the first time in my life, I felt like if I were to die right then, I would go to the celestial kingdom. I felt so much peace. Now that I had put my entire life in his hands, he was ready to take it and lead me exactly where he wanted me to go. And not just me, but my entire family. My family then had their own life-changing experience. When I was almost halfway through my mission, my grandpa, my dad's dad, ended up getting really sick.
My mom died in 1995 and left my dad pretty lonely. And so when we moved down here next to him in 95, I guess my mom died in 94. We moved in 95. Anyway, Dad was always so conscious about eating and exercising. We used to watch him hike the mountain when he was 85 years old up here. And he had these mini strokes, and he started to go downhill a little. And then he had prostate cancer, but he wouldn't go to a doctor. He got sicker and sicker. And he got so bad that we needed to go down and watch him constantly. And then that wasn't working out very well, so we kind of coerced him to come up here and live in our house because he was so independent. As soon as he'd get feeling better, he'd be up and walking back home. So it put a lot of stress on us trying to take care of him. It put a lot of stress on Margaret because she was doing the brunt of it, but we put him in a room here and we took constant care and fed him, but he just kept going downhill. And he passed away in September of 2006 after a couple of months of pretty intense care, and he was fighting death the whole way.
So, during the month after he died, I started having trouble with my stomach. Just having some stomach trouble. And I was on a trip up north to Salt Lake with my daughter, Nicole. And in the middle of the night, I became really sick, and I felt like I needed to get to help. So in the morning, we went and found an Instacare, and I saw the doctor there, and he said that I needed to go into the hospital. Told me it would take about 4 hours to get in up there, and I thought, well, I can drive home in 4 hours. So I just headed down to southern Utah and got home, and then ended up going into the hospital from there, and I had liver failure. My skin turned bright yellow. And,
She was yellow. She looked bad.
And I was very sick and in extreme pain, extremely painful. And I was in the hospital for about a week, a few days. And they put me on medication for it and told me that it was permanent and that that somewhere down the road I would need a transplant. They said anywhere from 2 to 20 years. The average was about 12, and just depended on, I guess it was whenever the medication didn't work anymore. So I came home. I was still in quite a lot of pain at the time. And then, so for the month of December, I was really sick. Really, really sick. And really yellow. And I was very scared. And I spent a lot of time praying, a lot of time reading the scriptures, trying to find answers, trying to just find some assistance and comfort as I adjusted to this new way of life that I was experiencing. And, had several tests and different things done with a specialist in St. George. And in the end, by the end of December, they scheduled me to have a liver biopsy. And I had, about 2 or 3 years prior to this, I had run the St. George Marathon. And I had discovered through that experience, I had injured my foot, and I'd spent months preparing, and I didn't want to cancel running the marathon. And so and then I stressed a lot about it because I couldn't sleep at night because I was worried about running 26 miles with a sore foot. And so I got a cold added to that. So the Wednesday before the marathon, which was Saturday, I had a terrible chest head cold. And I thought, there's no way in the world I was going to be able to run that marathon like that. And so the thought occurred to me that I had made myself sick, being so worried about running on a bad foot. And I just thought, if I can make myself sick, I must be able to make myself well. So I started every half hour visualizing health, imagining little fighting antibodies inside of me going in and fighting that sickness. And I did that every half hour, drank water. I so badly wanted to run that marathon. And by Friday, I was perfectly well. And I ran the marathon. And so from that time on, I would always use that when I would get a cold or get sick. And I was able to heal myself pretty regularly. And so when I got this liver failure, it didn't even occur to me that that was a possibility. But I just got sicker and sicker because I just knew how bad I was. And so Hugh finally said,
Well, the doctor called. One thing, I thought I was losing my wife at the time. I thought she was dying. And it was, I was wishing I could do something to help her, wishing I could make her better. And but she did start to get better. And then the doctor called and gave her some bad news about her liver. What did he say?
I don't remember.
Just said something about, he found out what it was, something, cirrhosis of her liver cells or something, and that she needed to come in. And I just noticed the change from her starting to get better, that she just went sick, just like that. She was down in bed, couldn't hardly move. And I said, the doctor called and pronounced you sick. And I just,
So he just said, you've been healing yourself of things. Heal yourself. Stop going downhill. Start doing something, So I just started doing that same thing I had been doing with colds and things like that. And anyway, I did that quite a bit. And then I was scheduled for a liver biopsy because they wanted to see they said there were two kinds of liver disease, and they wanted to know for sure which one, but either one would have the same consequences. So I just, so I went in for that liver biopsy, and a week before Christmas, the nurse from the specialist's office called and said, your liver is perfectly fine. And they tapered me off the medication, and the yellow started fading, and I got well. And during that whole experience, I spent a lot of time on my knees, and because I was so frightened, and my future looked so bleak. And through that whole experience, I came out with one message that I had gotten, and that was through prayer, through the experiences I had, I got the message that I did not have the pure love of Christ in my heart, and I had come here to learn that. So that stuck with me after that experience. I got well, I was fine, but that really stuck with me. And so...
Tell him what the doctor told you when he found out that you got better.
Oh, well, my daughter took one of her children in for the baby checkup. And the original, our family physician that we went to before the specialist, he sent us to the specialist, he was checking her baby and asked her how I was doing. And she told him that I had gotten well. And he said, well, that's a miracle. And I think it was.
He said that normally...
Well, yeah, the people don't get over that.
They don't get over it, and that she'd need a transplant.
Yeah, he had told me that before. And so so I came out of that experience trying to figure out how I get the pure love of Christ in my heart. How do I learn that? Because I had gotten that so clearly. And I tried a lot of things during that year, trying to do things for other people, and trying to figure that out. I did a lot of reading, and I had some amazing experiences after that opened my eyes to see things differently. One was that there was a young woman that I became friends with. She was like the age of my daughter, and I came to really love her like a daughter, and got to know her really well. And then I found out she was gay and was living the gay lifestyle. And I was really worried about it because I just really loved her. And I remember talking to Hugh and saying, should I talk to her and tell her she can't be doing this, she can't be living this way? And I knew that she was in a relationship with another woman, and she was just wonderful. And I kept, having LDS background and upbringing, I was worried about her because I really loved her a lot, like a daughter. And I said to my husband, I need to talk to her. I need to talk to her and tell her this is not okay to be living this way. And he said, I don't think you really should do that. But so I was thinking that way, but I hadn't said anything to her. And so I kind of had this on my mind that I needed to talk to her because this wasn't okay the way she was living her life. And on one occasion, I was giving her a hug. We were giving each other a hug. I was in the spirit as much as I ever have been in my life. And as I hugged her, I was so in the spirit, and I just profoundly received the message that God had nothing but love for her. That was all that was there, was love. Nothing else, no judgment, nothing else. And it just floored me because I had thought differently, and it was my answer. I knew that was true, and I had never thought that before. I never understood that before, and so eased my mind, and I totally changed my way of seeing things from that experience. And I knew she was beautiful, and I no longer felt that judgment of how she was living her life. It was gone. I totally saw it differently. So that experience and knowing her changed the way I looked at that for the rest of my life. That changed. And it was about maybe a year later that our son Kyle came to us.
By the time I got back from my mission, my parents were completely different people. It was like there was this new light inside of them, this new excitement for life. I had never seen them happier and more loving before in my life. For the first time, they would give each of us kids a big hug and tell us that they loved us. Her judgments of other people were gone, and my parents' marriage was the happiest I'd ever seen it. They no longer fought about anything. It was a miraculous change. About a month after I got home from my mission, I got a really strong prompting from the Spirit that it was time to come out to my parents. It was very clear and very strong, but I was terrified and I didn't want to do it. I kind of ignored the prompting for a couple more weeks before I finally decided to come out to my sister first.
He had talked to our daughter first and her husband and told them that he was gay.
And then had her hold me to telling my mom and dad. So she would call me almost every day for like a week, saying, "Are you going to do it today? Are you going to tell them today?" I kept saying no and kept putting it off.
And they had talked him into coming with them and coming to tell us. And so we were sitting here in the family room.
I sat both of my parents down on the couch and came out to them while my sister held my hand. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I was literally shaking.
And then he told us. And I was so shocked. Couldn't have been more shocked.
Even then, afterwards, she curled up in the fetal position and
I was
cried on herself to sleep on the couch.
well, no, just the next morning, I laid on the couch that way. Yes, I hadn't come to terms with it at all, and so that lasted about an hour. And I got up off the couch and picked up a book that happened to be sitting that I'd been reading, and I read 2 or 3 sentences, and it profoundly shifted me. And from that moment on, I was okay. I was all right with it. And I was always gave Kyle a hug, and I was very positive with him about it from the start. But within myself, I had to find peace about it.
They said, "Well, Kyle, we will love and support you no matter what you choose to do with your life." I could not have been more relieved. I told them not to worry, that I still wanted to get married to a woman, and that I didn't want to live the gay lifestyle. But they just repeated the same thing, that they would love and support me no matter what.
And I reached a point one day when I was thinking inside myself. I thought, if there was no one in the world but Kyle and me, would I care? And I realized I wouldn't care. It was only other people's opinions, because I had already decided for myself that it was okay, and that I didn't have that judgment anymore. But the idea of everyone else's judgment was huge for me. And as I thought about it, and I realized if there was only Kyle and me, I wouldn't care. Then I thought to myself, the opinions of other people was not a good enough reason to hurt my son. And so I let that go. And I've had just wonderful peace about it ever since. And it's been a little bit of a process to come to total peace with it, but we're there now, I think. And I just really believe that, I've met a lot of young men who've been friends of Kyle's since he came out to us, and I've never met better people, kinder, gentler, better young men. And my heart breaks for the challenges that they face in their lives. They have such a struggle finding peace, finding value within themselves. And I just hate to see that. And I hate to see that in my son's world, because he is truly one of the absolute best people I've ever known. And I want him to have happiness in his life. That's really all I want anymore, is happiness for him.
Well, I grew up in a very different world that is today. I remember when I was in high school, 16 or something, a movie came out, I think it was Diamonds Are Forever, James Bond, and people were talking about there were homosexuals in the movie, and I had to, what is that? I had to ask, And I never really thought much about it. I thought that was just kind of a quirky thing or something. But I went on my mission to Oakland, California. San Francisco was in our mission. It was in the 70s. And every Sunday, the gays would all come out to the Golden Gate Park there. And our mission, we'd talk about it and talking about how it was Sodom and Gomorrah over there and how horrible it was, all these gays. And I remember my companion and I were talking to this man about the gospel and trying to convince him to take the discussions, and he kept saying, well, I don't think the church would accept me. And I was totally clueless what he was trying to say. Finally, he came out and said, oh, I'm a homosexual. He was a very nice man, very nice to visit with. But the minute he said homosexual, my companion and I both stood up, and I shook his hand and say, well, it was nice talking to you. Sorry, and we laughed. And, that's the kind of feelings that we kind of had. And then I had the same experience. It was a profound spiritual experience for me. I felt pure love for everyone afterwards, like I've never felt before. I felt almost a transcendent experience that totally changed my view and my view of other people. Realized that I had been very judgmental in my thinking. And then when Kyle came out to us, you say it was about a year after that he came out to us, my first thought was, well, we can fix this type of thing. And Kyle himself, did everything he could to try to change the way he felt. We went to, one of the things that kind of opened my eyes was going to Evergreen, which was a church-sponsored program. And we got to meet a lot of people in the community, married men with families that struggled with same-sex attraction. And so that kind of opened my eyes a lot more to it. And then we helped send Kyle to these Journey to Manhood seminars, and Kyle did everything to try to do manly things or whatever you do to become a man, play basketball, watch sports, football. He had a program set up, but I think the thing that really affected me most is when Kyle and I went to Russia back in 2008. He gave me a book to read that was written by the parents of a man that had killed himself at Mattis's. And anyway, that book was so insightful to see the hell that poor man went through, thinking that he was sinful and awful and hated himself, and he did everything he could to try to change, and no matter what he did, he was still attracted to man. I mean, that book really helped me see. And anyway, it's been a gradual change for me, but the thing I know is that Kyle is one of the most loving and kind people I know, and he loves the church. He loves kids. He wants to have a family. He wants to, why would he ever choose this? Why would he choose this, the kind of condemnation and marginalization that they give people that are gay in our society? Why would he ever choose this? And it has been a gradual change, and it's interesting. I've come full circle in this, and it's strange for me to talk to other people or hear other people talk about it. And I try to mention, I always try to put a little bit in there, but it's hard because in this society that we live in, you're very marginalized. You're very thought of being sinful or wrong, or that you're going to hell, and so it's sad for me to see that now. I'm just on the total other side of the fence. But I do see a gradual shift, a little bit. I know that we've come a long way. And, what's the what's the Indian saying? Before you judge somebody walking in moccasins for a mile or so, you really can't know until you've known and loved a person that is gay and realize that they are wonderful, and that they aren't sinful or trying to do things wrong. I mean, there are those people in our society that give that a bad name, but there are a lot out there both ways, heterosexuals. But everyone that I've known that is gay, Kyle's friends or people that I've met in my business, in my office, they're all just wonderful people, and I see it so differently than I used to. I guess you could say my eyes have been opened. And I'm totally fine with Kyle. In fact, I want him to be happy. I want him to find someone that he can share his life with. I hate to see him live a life as an outcast or as a stranger. And I would love to see him remain active in the church because he's so talented. He's such a great teacher. I mean, he wanted to be a seminary teacher because he loves the gospel so much. He loves to teach. He's very talented at that. Very musical. He's always played the organ. He's even played the organ at the conference center. There are a lot of ways that we think different now than we thought 100 years ago in regard to a lot of things. And it's just a shift that happens as people come to know God more and seek to understand each other more, seek to love each other more.
I came out to my two younger brothers like 3 years after I came out to my parents. I just didn't think that they were quite ready to hear it, and I was worried about how they'd react. I decided that I was just going to wait for the best moment to come out to them. And it just happened to be on the very last day that I was home for Christmas break. And we were all in my brother Ryan's room.
I remember I was in Ryan's room. We were just talking. It was later at night, and Kyle walks in, just kind of joining our conversation for a little bit.
And they were talking about girls and about the girls they were dating. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. I'm telling them.
All of a sudden, he's just like, "Hey guys, I had something I wanted to talk to you guys about."
And they were just like, okay. And they were thinking, oh, some kind of, dirt story.
Something that was intense, I could kind of feel his energy. He's got something that he really wants to say, and he didn't seem comfortable saying.
I said, well, there's a reason why I'm not married yet. And they both got really quiet. And my brother Ryan just stared at me and was like, what?
He said that his whole life he's been attracted to men, and that was like the last thing I expected to come out of his mouth.
And they were just shocked, and they were really quiet for a little while.
Yeah, I was just like blown away. I remember looking over at Ryan was just like, just kind of like staring into his face, just as shocked as could be.
And I told them, yeah, gay people are everywhere. You'd be really surprised how many gay people there are. And Ryan was just like, well, yeah, my own brother.
And then I remember Kyle, after we kind of talked about it for a little bit, stood up, walked over into the closet and closed himself in the closet and then stepped out. He's like, all right, it's official. Out of the closet. It's interesting though, because it was all of a sudden like a huge puzzle piece in my life was put in place. Because me and Kyle never got along. We were actually kind of like mortal enemies growing up. I was the little annoying brother, and he was the older brother that demanded respect, and I was not about to give him any respect. And so we battled constantly. It just didn't make any sense to me. And so having Kyle come out to us and tell us, it answered a lot of questions.
Tyler reacted with so much love afterwards. It was like something hit him, something changed him about that. And he suddenly felt really bad about how he and I got along as younger siblings. That night, he apologized to me, and I apologized to him, and we were on good terms for the first time.
I felt this overwhelming feeling that I needed to be better. I needed to step up and be a real brother to Kyle, because I hadn't been my entire life. We hated each other. And realizing what Kyle had been going through his whole life growing up gay made me realize that he needs to be loved more than anything. He needs our family to wrap around him, and he needs to know that we love him and that we care about him and that we're here for him and this, these things that he's facing. And, there's been lots of talk about gays and whatnot in the media and whatnot, and amongst my friends and things. And whenever people ask me what I feel or how I feel about gays and them living that lifestyle and whatnot, I think of my brother Kyle, and I'm so happy for him. I'm happy that he is finally at peace. He's found peace in his life. Because since Kyle came out and has told us that, he's a completely different person. He's much, much more loving, and we get along so well now. I literally, it's like he's a completely different person now. I can tell that things in his life he's at peace with. And so it just makes me very happy to see that and to know that he is that happy. And so I definitely support him in the decisions that he's making in his life. I'll be there for him, whatever path he chooses. My understanding is that my role is just to be a brother. My role is to love him. And that's what our family has done. I would very much hope that that's how all families would react. With a daughter or a son that is gay, that they would react with love and not the opposite.
That's one thing that I love about our life right now with Kyle, is that all of his brothers and sisters have been totally in his corner. They all just really love him, and they all understand. And it's been fun to see how close our family has gotten, and I think that's been one of the things that's made us so close, is everybody is really looking out for him and very understanding, very supportive, and I loved seeing that.
Yeah, I've done a lot of prayer and study and research on this subject. And in a lot of ways, I admire Kyle, that he is following this path in his life when it's not an easy path. I don't know why anybody ever choose it. It takes a lot of courage. This is the time to embrace. And there's no answer but love. Judgment only separates us and divides us. Love connects us. Things are the way they are. And we can, put our mind gymnastics around it and try to twist it to make it fit our box. But some things, when you really look at it, just don't fit in the box. And so you gotta think, there is something else going on here that's more than we think. I don't condemn people that in the church that are afraid of gays and think that they're horrible and are fighting against them. They're trying to do the best they can. They're trying to defend their right.
It seems to me, as I read the scriptures, that Christ was all about the outcast. And I always thought it was so interesting that he could heal at a distance, but he touched the leper. And I really think there's something in that he was trying to say, that everyone is valuable and worthy of our love and our touch and our kindness at the very least. I believe that pure love of Christ is unconditional, and it is seeing people with our hearts and loving them no matter what.
Margaret Hugh Howard, and we support our son, Kyle, who's gay. And we love him. We'll support him through his life, and always welcome him into our home, and wish the best for him, no matter what path he takes.
I will always walk with him.
I'll say what you want.